No one prepares you for that moment, when the thing you love the most is called a mistake. It was 12:16 at night. The third-floor apartment was so quiet, you could hear the clock ticking, each second pressing into the silence. In the living room, a warm yellow light washed over walls covered in awards and certificates, proof of a family that had always lived at the top, and right in the middle of it all, Daniel Hayes stood still. His father was holding the tablet. The screen was still glowing, a world unfolding across it, something entirely different. Cities floating in the sky, roads made of light bending like streams of memory, and characters moving slowly, as if carrying stories they had not finished telling. 3 months. No, almost 6. 6 months of staying up until 3 in the morning. 6 months of building that world piece by piece. 6 months of hiding it inside a meaningless folder, hoping no one would ever find it. And now, it was in the hands of the one person he feared the most. His father did not speak right away. He stared at the screen for a few more seconds, then looked up. There was no curiosity in his eyes, no surprise, only disappointment. "So this is why you are falling off track." The words landed heavy, like a verdict. Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked at his own world, reflected in someone else's eyes, and felt something tighten in his chest. To him, it was a dream. To them, it was a mistake. The Hayes family did not create dreams. They created results. They built reputations, power, and straight paths leading to a version of success that had already been decided. His father was a senior partner at a major financial firm in Boston. His mother taught economics at a prestigious university, and his older sister Lauren was perfection in every standard that family believed in. She had stepped into Wall Street young, and never once taken a wrong step. And Daniel, he was the exception, not because he was not smart enough, but because he saw the world differently. When he was 12, Daniel had created a small animation using free tools online, a simple story about a boy lost in a city with no way out. He brought it into the living room, heart racing, eyes lit up, waiting to be seen. His father watched for a few seconds. "It is nice," he said, "but do not let this distract you from your studies." A few seconds, that was enough. From that moment on, Daniel learned to hide. He kept creating, but in silence, in the dark, in hours when no one was watching. And tonight, everything had been dragged into the light. "You are in your second year of finance," his father continued, his voice lower now. "Do you understand what that means?" Daniel did. He understood perfectly. It meant the path had already been laid out. Internships, jobs, promotions, a life that was safe, stable, respectable, but not his. "It is not a game," Daniel said, his voice quiet but steady. "It is an interactive storytelling project. It can become something real." His father let out a small laugh, not amused, just tired. "People can dress anything up with fancy words," he said. "At the end of the day, it is still something pulling you in the wrong direction." The air in the room grew heavy. His mother stood nearby, silent. Lauren leaned against the wall, watching. No one spoke for him. And in that moment, Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. Not loud, not sudden, but deep. A question surfaced in his mind, sharp and impossible to ignore. "If this is my family, why do I feel like I do not belong here?" He looked at the screen one last time. The world he created was still moving, quiet, patient, as if none of this mattered to it. And in that moment, Daniel realized something he had been avoiding for years. It was not that he was not good enough, he just did not belong here. He looked up again, no hesitation left in his eyes. "I am not deleting it." The room went completely silent. It was the first time he had ever said that, and it was the moment everything started to change. The door closed behind him with a dry, hollow sound. Not loud, but enough to cut off everything that was left. Daniel did not turn back. Outside, the night air was colder than he expected, the wind moving through the empty street, carrying a kind of emptiness that felt real. In his hand was an old suitcase, its wheels rattling unevenly against the pavement. In his pocket, $4,800 in savings. No plan, No clear destination. Just one decision. He had chosen to leave. The first steps are always the hardest, not because of the distance, but because of what you leave behind. A home, a name, a path already laid out, and the people who never truly saw you. Daniel took a night ride to California, a long, quiet journey filled with thoughts he could not quite name. He sat by the window, watching city lights stretch and blur like memories pulled too far. In his head, his father's voice kept repeating, steady and unchanging, like a truth carved in stone. You are wasting your life. He closed his eyes, but he could not silence it. 3 days later, Daniel stood in front of an old apartment in Oakland. The door opened, and Lily Tran, his college friend, stood there. She looked at him for a few seconds, then pulled him inside without asking anything more. You can stay here as long as you need, she said, her voice soft but certain. The room was small, the wooden floor worn, the sofa faded with time. But for Daniel, it was the first place where he could breathe without being judged. The first days passed quickly, but they were not easy. During the day, he searched for work, sending applications to creative studios, tech companies, anywhere that had something to do with what he wanted to build. The responses came back polite, but all the same. We are looking for someone with more experience. Your portfolio is interesting, but not quite enough. Do you have a relevant degree? Each answer chipped away at him, slowly, piece by piece. Eventually, he took a job at a bubble tea shop. His shifts ran from morning to afternoon. The work was repetitive, mechanical, no thinking required. Mixing drinks, cleaning counters, smiling at customers whose faces he would not remember. $11 an hour. Enough to survive, not enough to live. But at night, everything changed. From 9 in the evening until 3 in the morning, Daniel sat in front of his old laptop. The blue light reflected off his tired face, but his eyes were different. Focused. Alive. He did not continue the old project. He started over. A new world began to take shape, piece by piece. No more floating cities, no more roads of light. This time, it was a sky folded from fragments of memory. He called it paper sky. In that world, every memory could fly. The good ones were light, rising high and glowing softly. The painful ones were heavy, falling, breaking into fragments. But they did not disappear. They could be gathered again, rebuilt, turned into something new. Every line of code, every frame, every movement carried a part of him. The times he had been overlooked, the disappointed looks, the careless words that stayed longer than they should have. He was not just building a product, he was stitching himself back together. Some nights, he would stop, his hands still on the keyboard, staring at the screen without typing a single word. Not because he had no ideas, but because something familiar was rising again. Am I wrong? Am I wasting everything? That voice was not his, but it lived inside him. Lily would see him like that sometimes. She did not say much. She would just place a cup of hot tea beside him and walk away. You do not have to prove anything to anyone, she said once, when he had been staring at the screen for too long. Daniel did not answer, but the words stayed. 3 weeks passed, then 4, then 5. His savings began to fade. The pressure grew heavier with each day. One morning, he received an email from the studio he had hoped for the most. We regret to inform you. He did not read the rest. He closed the laptop. For the first time in weeks, he did not open it that night. He sat on the sofa, staring into nothing. No thoughts, no emotions, just emptiness. Lily walked out and watched him for a long moment. Are you going to stop? She asked. Daniel did not answer right away. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had built an entire world. If he stopped, everything would be easier. He could go back, apologize, start again on the path they had chosen for him. Stable, safe, accepted, but it would not be him. Daniel took a slow, heavy breath. No, he said. He stood up, opened the laptop again. The blue light returned. And this time, he was not just building a dream, he was fighting to keep it. No one thought it would happen on an ordinary night, and Daniel himself was not prepared for it. It was 2:13 in the morning. The room was dark, with only the glow of the screen lighting his face. Lines of code were still running, the world of paper sky slowly coming together, fragments of memory rising and circling in the quiet space. Daniel pressed publish. It was just a small demo, no promotion, no expectations, just a test. He shut down his laptop and went to sleep. 6 hours later, everything changed. When he opened his eyes, his phone was vibrating nonstop. Not one or two notifications, but hundreds, then thousands. He sat up immediately, his heart beating faster. The screen showed something he had never seen before. His demo was spreading. Not loud, not explosive, but quietly powerful. One person shared it, another wrote a thought about it, then more people found their way to it. The first comments appeared. I cried playing this. It feels like someone understands me. This is not a game, this is an experience. Daniel read each line slowly, unable to believe what he was seeing. One comment held his attention longer than the rest. I played it 6 times, not to win, but to feel. The name was Daniel Brooks. A name Daniel Hayes had never heard before, but within hours, it would change his life. The message came that same afternoon. This is not a product, this is a voice. Call me. Short. Direct. No explanation. Daniel hesitated for a few seconds, then called. The conversation lasted 4 hours. Daniel Brooks was not someone who talked much, but every sentence he said landed exactly where Daniel had never been able to put into words. He understood. Not just the code, not just the design, but the reason Paper Sky existed. You are not making a game, he said. You are telling a story that others are too afraid to tell. Daniel stayed silent. It was the first time someone had said that out loud. 3 days later, Daniel Brooks flew to Oakland. They met in the small room where the old laptop was still running the demo. There was no office, no team, no clear plan, only an idea and belief. We can turn this into a company, Daniel Brooks said. It sounded distant, almost unreal, but the way he said it made it feel possible. 2 weeks later, Daniel Hayes walked into a meeting room in Austin. Across from him were 3 investors, people who had seen hundreds of projects, people who were not easily convinced. They did not ask about his grades. They did not ask about his degree. They asked one question. What are you trying to say to the world? Daniel took a deep breath, and for the first time, he did not speak like a student. He spoke like someone who had lived through his own story. When he finished, the room fell silent for a few seconds. Then one of them nodded. We want to invest. $3.2 million. It was more than money. It was recognition. Over the next 6 months, everything moved so fast Daniel could barely keep up. A team was built, 8 people, each bringing their own skill, their own perspective, their own piece of soul. The days stretched long, 16 hours, 18 hours, without stopping. Daniel was no longer working alone, but one thing never changed. Emotion. Paper Sky did not become just a commercial product, it became a lived experience. On launch day, there were no fireworks, no big event, just a button. 3 days later, the number appeared, and the entire team stood still. 3 million downloads. Articles began to surface. Analysis videos. Personal stories from players. One person wrote that the game helped them face painful memories. Another said it made them feel less alone. Daniel read everything. Slowly. And in that moment, he realized something he had never allowed himself to believe before. What he created was not meaningless. It was reaching people. One evening, Daniel sat alone in his new office. City lights reflected through the glass. He thought about the old room, the worn-out sofa, the nights he doubted himself. If he had stopped back then, none of this would exist. His phone vibrated. A new email. The subject was short. Offer. Daniel opened it and read every line carefully, without rushing. A major company wanted to acquire the entire project. The number was large enough to make anyone stop. He leaned back in his chair, looking up at the ceiling. And for the first time in a long time, he did not hear that old voice in his head anymore. There was only one question. How far can I go? And the answer was not over yet. They did not come back because they missed him. They came back because they needed him. The call came on a quiet afternoon. Daniel was standing by the window of his office in Portland, looking down at the slow flow of traffic below. This city was different from anywhere he had lived before, less noise, less rush, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. His phone vibrated. An unknown number, but a familiar area code. He stared at the screen for a few seconds, a vague feeling passing through him, like an old memory brushing against the surface. Then he answered. Daniel, it's me, his sister's voice. Lauren. 2 years, not a single call, not a single message, not a single question about how he was doing, and now she was calling. Daniel did not speak right away. He let the silence stretch for a moment longer. Are you still there? She asked, her voice different, no longer sharp, something more careful, almost hesitant. Yes, Daniel said. We saw the article about you, she continued, and the video about your new project. It looks impressive. The word impressive came out slowly, like she was choosing it with care, like she was trying not to say the wrong thing. Daniel leaned lightly against the wall. He understood. He did not need to hear the rest. So, he said, what now? There was a brief pause, then Lauren took a breath. Mom and Dad want to see you. Mom and Dad. Those two words once carried weight, once made him hesitate, once made him turn back. But now they were just words. For what? Daniel asked. Just to talk, to see you again. We are family. Family. Daniel looked out the window. The city kept moving. Life went on. He remembered the nights in that small room in Oakland, the days when no one called, no one asked how he was surviving. Family was not there. Okay, he said. This weekend. They arrived on Saturday morning. A black car stopped in front of Daniel's house, the house he bought after selling his project. Not flashy, not loud, but enough to say one thing. He had made it. The car door opened. His father stepped out first, still in the same familiar suit. But something had changed. His shoulders were no longer as straight, his eyes no longer as certain. His mother followed, still composed, still controlled, but quieter. Lauren was last, scanning everything with the same sharp professional gaze she once used to evaluate deals. They walked inside. The air felt tight, stretched too far. Daniel showed them around. The living room, the kitchen, the workspace, everything clean, refined, nothing unnecessary. His father nodded slightly. Not bad, he said. Just 2 words, but Daniel understood. That was his way of acknowledging. They sat down. No one spoke first. Finally, his mother did. Daniel, we should not let things go on like this. Her voice was calm, but it no longer carried the same authority. Daniel said nothing. He waited. His father looked down at his hands, then spoke. Work is not what it used to be. Some investments did not go well. Lauren picked up quickly. My company is still stable, but the family is having financial difficulties. Then his mother said it plainly. We need your help. No more going around it. No more hiding. Just the truth. How much? Daniel asked. About 2.5 million, Lauren said, her voice still steady, still professional, like this was just another negotiation. 2.5 million. The number was spoken as lightly as a dinner bill. Daniel looked at each of them. His father, the man who once told him he was wasting his life. His mother, the one who said if he left, he was no longer family. Lauren, who never called when he was at his lowest. No apology, no admission. Just a request. Daniel leaned back in his chair, silent for a few seconds. Then he spoke. No. One word. Clear. Calm. Not raised, not angry, but unchangeable. His mother stiffened. Daniel, this is family. Family, he repeated slowly. He stood up, took a few steps, then turned back. Family is when I have nothing, and you are still there. No one spoke. Family is when I am sleeping on a worn-out sofa, not knowing what tomorrow looks like, and someone still calls to ask if I am okay. He looked directly at Lauren. Did you call? She did not answer. He turned to his father. Did you ever ask? His father lowered his head. Daniel took a slow breath. You did not lose me, he said. You let me go. The room seemed to freeze. Now I have something you need, so suddenly, I am family again. He shook his head slightly. I do not live like that anymore. No one argued. No one pushed back. Because they knew. This time, Daniel was not the boy standing in that living room years ago. He did not need their approval, and that was the moment they lost their power. They left without looking back, but this time, the one who stayed was no longer the boy he used to be. The gate closed, the car disappeared down the tree-lined road, and Daniel stood still on the steps, not chasing, not calling out. A light breeze passed by, carrying a feeling that was unfamiliar. It was not emptiness, it was lightness, as if something had finally been set down after years of carrying it without even realizing. He walked back inside. The space looked the same. Nothing had changed. But inside him, everything had. For the first time, silence did not feel lonely. A week later, Daniel signed another contract. Not to sell what he had built, but to create something new, a creative space for people who were once like him. People with ideas but nowhere to begin. People who had been told they were not serious, not practical, not good enough. He called it the open frame. An old warehouse in downtown Portland was transformed. Not luxurious, not complicated, but filled with light. Rows of computers, drawing boards, recording equipment. Small corners where people could sit and build something of their own. No degree required, no money required, just an idea. On opening day, there was no media, no big event, just a few dozen people walking in, hesitant, unsure. Daniel stood in the corner, watching. He saw himself in them. A girl, maybe 13, sat in front of a screen. Her hands rested on the keyboard, but did not move. Her eyes glanced around, as if waiting for someone to tell her she did not belong. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. What are you working on? He asked. She flinched slightly, hesitated for a few seconds. I am trying to draw a world, she said quietly. Can I see it? She opened the file. A floating garden in the sky. Flowers changing color when touched. Simple, unfinished, but alive. Daniel looked at it for a long time, not to judge, but to feel. Then he smiled. This is beautiful, he said. Tell me everything about it. She looked at him, her expression changing, from hesitation to surprise, as if she had never heard those words before. And in that moment, Daniel remembered. A 12-year-old boy, an old laptop, a small pixel dragon, and a pair of eyes waiting to be seen. No one had ever told that boy it was beautiful. So now, he did. In the weeks that followed, the open frame began to fill. Ideas appeared. Stories were shared. People who had once been silent began to speak. Daniel did not stand on a stage. He did not need to. He moved among them, listening, asking, guiding, creating a place he had never had. One evening, he sat alone in that space. The lights were still on, the chairs were empty, but the air still held traces of life. His phone vibrated. An email, no subject. He opened it. Just one line. I watched the video of what you built. The children looked happy. The sender. His mother. Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. No strong emotion, no anger, no pain, just clarity. Some things cannot go back to the way they were, and they do not need to. He turned off the screen and set the phone down. Outside, the city grew darker, lights turning on one by one. Daniel stood up and walked around the space. Everything was still there. The tables, the machines, the unfinished dreams. And this time, No one called them meaningless. He stopped in the middle of the room, looking around, then spoke softly, almost to himself. I built it. Not just a place, but a way of living, a way of believing in things others could not see. If you are listening to this story, maybe you are standing where he once stood, between two choices, one safe, one true, and maybe you are afraid, afraid of being judged, afraid of failing, afraid of losing everything. But remember this, not everyone will understand your path, and that does not mean you are wrong. If there is something you have been hiding, an idea you have not dared to speak, a dream you have kept quiet for too long, start. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to begin. And if this story meant something to you, share your thoughts. Tell me what you are building. Because maybe the next story will be yours. If this story stayed with you even for a moment, don't just scroll past it. Think about that one thing you've been holding back. The idea, the dream, the version of yourself you've been too afraid to show. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe in stories about starting from nothing, about choosing your own path, and building something real from it, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me, because the next story might be yours.